Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the DC Chamber of Commerce 2021 Hospitality Forum. My name is Angela Franco. I'm the president and CEO of the DC Chamber of Commerce, and we're very, very excited for this morning's program. Thank you all so much for being here, and to our speakers and moderators, thank you so much for your participation. In the past several months, we have seen the hospitality industry shift and pivot as we navigate doing business in the middle of this pandemic. As we all are aware, it has been one of the industries that have suffered the most of the consequences from the pandemic. We have an incredible panel. We have the best of the best this morning. So truly enjoy them, learn, and ask all the questions you need to ask. This is a great, great opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, Events DC, and the DC Department of Economic Development. Now I want to introduce our moderator for today's session, Thomas, and I want to thank in advance to Greg, Elliot, and Christopher. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Thomas Penny is the president of Donahue Hospitality. As the senior leader of Donahue Hospitality, Thomas guides the operation of a portfolio of business class hotels, which are affiliated with the Marriott, Hilton, Choice, and Intercontinental Hotels Group. Thomas' leadership responsibilities for Donahue Hospitality include strategic planning, overall operation direction, development and acquisition of properties, and long-term financial and capital planning. Thomas is a career hospitality professional with multi-brand hotel experience and a history of achieving above average results in the areas of employee satisfaction, guest satisfaction, market share, and profitability. Thomas joined the Donahue Company in 1996, and he has shared a successful 21-plus-year career with the company in both a developmental and hands-on operational capacity. Thomas also serves on the board of the American Hotel and Lodging Association and is past board chair and member of the Hotel Association of Washington, D.C., and also Thomas and I had the opportunity to work in a lot of workforce development tasks and initiatives here in the district. So Thomas, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Angela, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I just want to start with a quick story. A friend once shared the story of a man who had experienced a great deal of grief and professional hardship. After losing his biggest account, his highest performing team member, and mounting financial stress, the business owner went to his church and asked his pastor why these things were happening to him. The pastor paused and said, "The Creator gives his most difficult challenges to his best students." As we begin this morning's forum, we're fortunate to be joined by the pastor's standards, three of our city's best students. We have Elliot Ferguson, President and CEO of Destination DC, Greg Odell, President and CEO of Events DC, and Christopher Floyd, owner Capital Restaurant Resources, one of the region's most respected hospitality management recruitment firms. So guys, the last 18 months has created some unique challenges for our destination, convention center, team members, and overall industry. Elliot, I'd like to start with you. Destination DC has had to navigate some difficult challenges as you were expected to market a destination that was shut down, perceptions of the city being unsafe following the insurrection on January 6th, and challenges with crime that made the national news. How were you able to navigate these challenges?
There you go, Thomas. Go right for the jugular. Good morning, and always a pleasure. It's good to be on the panel, and thank you to Angela Franco and team for inviting me. You know, I think you started off with a great verse in terms of expertise and always being a student. And if nothing else, I think that we've learned over the last few months that we are continuously learning how to navigate through uncharted waters. You know, clearly from our perspective, it's been devastating. You know, when you shut down business or tourism, that means no economic development tied to hospitality outside of course, the fact that things were still moving in terms of building. So the reality for me, Thomas, is that, I moved to DC December 2001, right after 9/11. We've had 4 government shutdowns. We've had anthrax, we had sniper, we had January 6th, and we had a very tumultuous 4 years with our last president. All these things have affected how we've been able to promote or influence people to look at DC through a different lens. It does not mean that it's insurmountable, but it meant that these are things and challenges that perhaps other cities have not had. So although this is unprecedented in terms of a total shutdown of business globally, we were, once we got over the shock and fear and still somewhat fear in terms of death of people with COVID-19, we really swung back into action and said, okay, well, let's make sure we're more proactive in getting business back on track in DC. So, there are a lot of steps that were tied to that, but it was really associated with getting the funding that we needed. And thanks to Events DC and for 2022 to the city and giving us the necessary dollars to be able to market a world-class destination when the whole global community is doing the same thing, trying to regain market share.
Thanks, Elliot. Greg, first and foremost, congratulations on being elected president of AIPC. For the benefit of the group, AIPC is the Industry Association for Professional Convention and Exhibition Center Managers worldwide. And we're proud, obviously, to have Greg transition as president. So congratulations again, Greg.
Thank you.
Greg, at the height of the pandemic, your building was shut down and was home to over 1,500 hospital beds. Thankfully, we didn't have to check in our first guests. But obviously that was a major transition for your building. What were some of the logistical challenges and learnings your team had to work through?
Sure. No, I appreciate the question. And one, I also want to echo Elliot's comments, just thanking Angela Franco, an honor to be here with you, Thomas, and with our esteemed colleagues on this panel. I will say, I loved your story. And I'll tease you, perhaps we should be calling you Pastor Penny now because of that story, but it was actually pretty heartfelt. So I think, we have been, I couldn't be more proud of our city and of our industry for what's happened for all of us. And I think what's been great is that we all could have sat around and thrown our hands up, but I think we've seen the resiliency of our city and of our community come together. And so everyone has pivoted. And I know that's a word we've all overused, but frankly, it was our honor and responsibility to be part of the public health response. And so, our team kicked into gear very quickly, frankly, to do what we do best. And if that meant standing up a hospital or a vaccination site, or hosting critical meetings throughout our different facilities, we were honored to do that. So I think it's been business as usual for us, strange as that sounds, but we really adapt to any type of event activity we have to support either our customers or the city. And so, that despite the fact that it felt unusual, really was something that gave us comfort that we could actually contribute and support to the city. And so, as you said, we're happiest of the fact that we didn't have any COVID patients actually come to our facility because the city was able to maintain that capacity throughout the city, but we felt like it was our responsibility to step up and do so. We're more proud of the fact that we actually helped get vaccines administered to over 100,000 people in our city, which is great. And so, but we're even happier now that we're returning to some business and some normalcy, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but that we felt like that was our part. And despite the fact that it was, the challenge, it was a small task for us to do in the broader things for what the city had to endure.
Thanks, Greg. Christopher, while I'm certain at the height of the pandemic, your business was equally disrupted, you may be in the enviable position, as we said early on in our pre-call, of experiencing significant growth because of the pandemic and people being disconnected from work for an extended period of time. Step us through some of the challenges you faced and the present state of your business.
Okay. First of all, I would also like to thank Angela for inviting me to the panel, and it's nice to be talking with you all. I do appreciate your quote. In fact, formerly I was a professional chef, and my favorite culinary quote comes from a French chef named Ferdinand Pointe, who said, in all professions, one is a student all one's life, especially in cooking. And so he was not a pastor, but he could cook. Yes, 2020 was a really rough year for us, and certainly an existential crisis that I did not know for sure if we were going to survive. Back when the pandemic hit, and my company does two things. We do management recruiting for salaried positions in the hospitality industry. So everything from chef to director of operation to marketing salespeople. And then we also have an hourly staffing component, which provides cooks, servers, captains, whatnot for a multitude of businesses. And so I remember in March, when the pandemic, when the shutdown really started to take hold, and the second and fourth quarters, because catering is big, typically our busiest quarters for staffing. And all of a sudden in that second week, all of these contracts started to cancel. And I thought, uh-oh, this is bad. And, in a week, we literally lost 75% of our business, just went away. And, I tried to rally my troops and say, hey, this will be over by summer, and the fourth quarter, it's an inauguration year, and make it all up in the fourth quarter. Well, of course, that didn't happen. And so it was a very tough year. And as most businesses and owners know, uncertainty is the hardest part of it to deal with. And I still think that that's a factor going on in the industry. But basically, I had to furlough some people. We got some PPP loans. I brought people back. I had to lay more people off. We had bits and spurts of business. We tried to pivot our staff to, cleaning and sanitizing and those sorts of operations. But really, there was a small trickle of business. And, thank you to our federal government, because without the PPP loans, I don't think we would have survived. And as you mentioned, then this March, the phone started ringing off the hook. And that was a welcome thing to see. Our old clients returning to us, new clients calling us. So now we are extremely busy. We are even turning away some business because I just don't want to disappoint people. And it's a pretty straightforward supply and demand glut issue. We can talk more about why that is, but essentially there are not enough people coming back into the hospitality industry to fill the current demand. And so we're very busy. We are staffing, and we are doing, we could have a great year, as you mentioned, but it is a challenge trying to find enough people.
And just building on what you said, obviously, be it restaurants or hotels, or even the convention center, I'm certain, we're all kind of dealing with some labor challenges in this market, obviously in the city, but throughout the country. Is there a reason to be optimistic that we're going to start to see more folks come back to work from your perspective?
Well, I'm always an optimist, but I had hoped that September would mark a big turning point, because there are a multitude of reasons why people weren't coming back. And that was, everything from childcare to healthcare concerns to unemployment benefits, which is the infamous culprit. And I think that this past couple of weeks, we have seen a slight uptick in people coming back to work, applying. I know, at least in the management recruiting part, there were certainly some people kind of sitting on the sidelines, sort of waiting for the perfect job. And now they're kind of saying, okay, well, and I think this is because unemployment's going away. Hey, I need to get back to work. I'm not going to be quite as picky as I was last month. So I think the tides are turning. I think there will be some equilibrium. However, I would add this: before the pandemic, there was actually a labor shortage in our industry, in hospitality, across the board. And so I don't actually think it's going to get better in the short term. I mean, there will be some balance. Wages, hourly wages have certainly gone up. Salaries have also gone up, both to the tune of, I'd say, 10 to 20% in the short term. So, I mean, businesses are going to have to do what businesses are going to have to do to get people back to work. But I know many, many operations that are not operating at full capacity, not because they don't want to, but because they just do not have the staff to do so.
Thomas, if you don't mind me adding something, within the industry, we talk about exactly what Christopher is referencing, is that our industry has an image problem. And, I think back 30 years ago when I entered, or 30 plus years ago when I entered this industry, I didn't know much beyond working in a hotel or a restaurant. And though there is absolutely nothing wrong with either of those opportunities, when you're really talking to those that you want to enter the industry from a professional perspective, they don't see opportunities to get up to a level where you're going to be a Thomas Penny or run a company like Christopher or do what Greg Odell does. So therefore, they don't enter at all. And what has happened within the last nearly 2 years is the fact that now the global community is realizing how vulnerable hospitality is as an industry. And therefore, now we're losing more people that have been in the industry that are not willing to come back because, as Christopher said, things look good. And then all of a sudden, we're seeing cancellations. So that's going to continue to be an issue for a long time as we look at rebounding as an industry.
I could
Yeah,
not agree more. Go ahead.
I'll tell you a quick anecdote. I have a good friend who is a front of the house manager, a GM, and a beverage director. Work both in restaurants and hotels, and his wife actually works in the corporate office at Marriott, and she survived some cuts. He was, of course, laid off for the past year, and he said to me, he said, I'm going to get out. I love hospitality, but having us both be in this industry, with children is a little bit too risky. And I have an MBA, and I'm going to go get a banker position because I don't want to do that, but he wants to mitigate their risk. And with both of them in the industry, they felt it was too precarious for them both to be, vulnerable. So you do hear things like that, and I think people are scared. So yeah, that's all I want to add.
Yeah, no, good point. Greg, thank you for immediately deploying resources against hotels early on and your stewardship of the city's hotel relief grant program late last year. It was seamless and user-friendly for all of us who used it. Will the process for administering the funds the council placed in the city's FY 2022 budget follow the same format? And if so, how quickly do you think we can open the portal? And what are your thoughts on timing for getting the funds out the door?
Thank you, Thomas, for the question. And look, we were happy to do it. Felt like it was the right thing to do. We're all in this together. So not just the hotels, but obviously our support of the restaurants, and equally important, the support of undocumented workers, as many of you know, and those are frankly family members and community members that didn't have access to federal funds. So just for what it's worth, that also will continue thanks to the support of the mayor and the council. So we're happy, Thomas, to move forward. The good news is that we've gotten that program, up and running. So we feel like much of the kinks have been worked out. There are some specific requirements of the council, so we'll make sure we adhere to that. But we think in the fall we can move pretty quickly. We'll get that money at the beginning of the fiscal year. So we're happy to jump on it and continue that grant program process.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Elliot, and you touched on this earlier, obviously Events DC helped in directing some resources to use to market the city. But if you can just maybe take a minute to share some insight on the campaign you recently rolled out, or at least early in the summer, Washington Now Experience DC, and share any other efforts underway to attract more leisure customers to the city.
No, absolutely. I will add that if it weren't for the dollars that we received from Events DC, we would not have had a marketing campaign. I'm an organization that's private, nonprofit, And my number one asset are my people. 80% of our funding comes from less than 1% of the hotel tax, but that's, substantial for us. And then, of course, we're membership based. So as you look at destination management organizations such as mine, and there's so many around the country, what happens when the primary resource of funding dries up and members aren't paying dues? That means I'm trying to protect my asset, which are our people. And that was the primary goal. That's what I said to the mayor. And I said to other stakeholders as they realize the importance of hospitality, arguably now more than ever. What happens when something is taken away? You really, really start saying, okay, I get it. And also the fact that we need to promote DC as a destination if we want to gain additional market share. And that means additional visitors coming to the city, different sizes of conventions and congresses, international coming to the city and meeting in the convention center. And of course, the highly coveted international transient market, those visitors stay longer and spend more. So right now, our campaign is not tied towards the international market because they can't come. It's tied towards the 50 million people that live within 4 hours of Washington, D.C., that there is a stronger probability of those individuals physically getting in a car, coming to the city, and really doing all the things in which you can do and socially distance, as well as eating in restaurants, now theater, and all the other things in which we focus on. So it was a Band-Aid, honestly, but it was an opportunity for us to do something. The Experience DC campaign was done in tandem with the Events DC and a local firm in which we used. And it really continues on with our DC Cool campaign. And again, as I referenced, the hospitality industry has an image problem, as does DC, which is always shocking to people that live here. Like, people think that we all wear suits, we're a boring government town. If government shuts down, DC shut down, there's nothing to do other than monuments, memorials, and museums, in which I love. So the campaign allows us to focus on restaurants, theater, nightlife, sporting events, outdoor activities, and all the other aspects of our city: architecture, neighborhoods, the Black experience, and the list goes on. And it has really resonated in terms of how the individuals that are looking at physically traveling, even now with concerns about the new variants, they're still saying, I'm coming to Washington, one, because the mayor and the city took COVID seriously, and then two, there's so many things I can do and socially distance, or go to a sporting event, or of course eat in great restaurants. So that's the goal. I can speak for a long time about how much we should be spending, Thomas. I think you know it, and in terms of being competitive against other major cities. But I'll end by saying our overall budget to promote DC is a fraction of what other cities and state organizations spend to promote their destinations. And you have to spend money to make money. And that's why cities like New York and states like Florida and California, which also happen to have the top 7 most visited destinations in the US, DC's number 8 by the international community. That's why they're spending more to get back and gain more market share.
They definitely doubled down. And again, thank you to Events DC for deploying those resources. Those resources made a tremendous difference for hotels and restaurants, and more importantly, our people getting them hours throughout the course of the summer. So, clearly we're grateful for that. Elliot, just one follow-up question. Much of the news over the course of the summer suggested hotels were rebounding well. If you can just clarify what parts of the country were experiencing the growth and why certain markets were lagging behind.
Yeah, absolutely. As Thomas knows, and Greg, I've just finished chairing the U.S. Travel Association, which was a very interesting time to focus on travel through an advocacy role of that organization. And there are lots of studies that are done. Nothing that we do is tied to me and my team saying, this is what we're going after. It's really tied to what the research tells us. And, much to our chagrin, beach destinations, smaller towns, places where you can do things outside, they've been eating our lunch in terms of occupancy in hotels, average daily room rate, visitation, therefore restaurant visits. It's all relative, whereas we normally do well, but what's missing for DC in terms of that recipe is the fact that we haven't had the larger congresses that meet in the convention center and the small meetings that meet in hotels. We have not had business travel at all, and we're not sure when that will return. We were hoping when Congress allowed meetings in person on the Hill, that would change the tide. But right now with these variants, that's on hold. So we're much better than we were in 2020, but we're far from where we should be in terms of market share. And I will end again by saying, I came here December 2001. It took us 10 years to rebound in terms of visitation back to DC after 9/11. We don't anticipate it being that long. That's what the experts are telling us, but it still will be 3 to 4 years, if not more, before we're back to where we were.
All right. Thanks, Elliot.
Hey, Thomas, I just wanted to add, I echo Elliot's comments about marketing dollars and investment, but I think it's broader than that. I think we as a city and a community are going to have to make substantial investments across the board. I think we are at a point now, a critical point where everyone's impacted, but those destinations that actually will make the investment, I think will benefit the greatest. And so whether it's, investing in our infrastructure or it's investing in other event programming, like I'll do a shameless plug, but we all know, like we're working on World Cup as an example for 2026. Like when you think about the economic impact of a World Cup coming to our destination, that's like a $500 million economic impact for us as a city. So, despite the fact that we may be capital constrained across the board, we need to invest in bringing that type of property here for our city and what it would do for, not just our industry, but the entire city and region, frankly. So I just think, thanks to the mayor and the deputy mayor, like they are looking at how we're going to leverage some of these federal dollars. But I think whether it's, again, supporting hospitality, specifically restaurants and hotels, or making these big investments across the board, like this is the time that we're going to differentiate ourselves from other destinations. So we got to think big and make that investment.
And Greg, you touch on the point. While we're still trying to push to get the pandemic in our rearview mirror, you're still looking at the future. The World Cup event is a few years out yet, and we're competing for it now. And so, to your point, it's extremely important that we continue to focus on securing business well into the future. So fingers crossed, we'll get some good news around that. Christopher, you're closer to the restaurants. When the city reopened, many saw an opportunity to get out and experience their favorite restaurants with trusted friends and family members. If you can just take a few seconds to give us a kind of an update on where restaurants are right now based upon what you're hearing from your restaurant colleagues.
Yeah, so it's been interesting. It's almost similar to that national trend of the resorts versus the downtown area. Restaurants that are in neighborhoods where people live have done much better throughout the pandemic and are typically doing better still. So, in city neighborhoods, like I live on Capitol Hill, I think people wanted to support their local restaurants, and the restaurants that were good really, pivoted, did specials, asked the community for support, and the communities responded in kind. So many restaurants, especially in the suburbs and in particular neighborhoods, are doing quite well, or some are even doing better. Now the downtown area is the conundrum and the real tough place, because as you guys pointed out, the business travel is just not there. And so they're really suffering downtown, and also operating in this kind of uncertainty of when is it going to come back. I've had clients who kind of, they've been talking to their landlords and getting breaks, and they'll say, okay, we're going to reopen in August, and then no, we can't do that. And we have some hotel clients downtown who are trying to make plans to ramp up for when to reopen or fully reopen and hire the staff accordingly. And it's frustrating for them and frustrating for us, because we go through all the motions and then they say, wait, well, corporate is telling us to hold back, or, the business just isn't there, because it is sort of a chicken and the egg thing. You need staff and managers to run the place, but if you don't have any business, you don't want to just waste money paying them. And so, getting that balance right is very tough. And I think, like you point out, we've experienced a lot of tough times for DC. I remember when 9/11, 20 years ago, I was working as a chef for the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in San Francisco. And 3 months after that, I got a pink slip because the hotel travel business went in the hole, and they needed to cut management, and there you have it. So I don't know, when that'll come back, but it's definitely a pronounced difference between neighborhood and suburb restaurants and the downtown region. I went to my doctor's office on 21st and K yesterday, and it was like a Sunday morning downtown. I mean, you could have parked anywhere. There was no traffic, and it's really sad to see because I love DC. I grew up in this area. I live in the city now. I moved out to San Francisco because in '94, when I graduated CIA, DC was not an exciting restaurant town. Well, it's just the opposite now. And part of the success of our business has been related to sort of renaissance DC has had. And it's such a vibrant restaurant community now. And I'm proud of it. And I want people to come and see it. And I also think, on top of all the things that Elliot mentioned, we have a beautiful green city. There's a lot of outdoor space and outdoor activities. And some chef friends were dropping their son off at Virginia Tech, and they stayed with us. And I gave them the grand tour, and they're like, "Wow, this is a really beautiful city." And they live in San Francisco, and so yeah, I mean, I hope people come back because it is such a great city and destination.
No doubt. Greg, we had a question to come in. If you could repeat the potential revenue for the World Cup, someone just asked that question.
Sure. Yeah. So the World Cup, is a 35-day experience. And so the economic impact could be as high as $500 million to the region, and specifically even within DC over that period of time for all the visitors that would come here. But we have to make sure they come here.
Yeah, significant.
Thomas, if you don't mind, I wanted to add one point to what Christopher was saying. As we're looking at the restaurant and special venues community, the other component that's missing, it's great that we have the patrons, especially from the region, back in restaurants. But what's missing, of course, would be those visitors that add an additional layer, even though we're better than we were. And when we talk about a major congress or convention,
We're having some challenges hearing you, Elliot. We're having some challenges hearing you.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah,
How about
we can
now?
hear you. We can hear you
Okay.
now.
Yeah, as you look at those congresses, they're booking further out. But what comes with those events, when we book a major convention in the convention center, could be anywhere from 15 to 100 special events that restaurants and other suppliers benefit from, which is why layering the business, when business travel is in place, they're looking for unique places to entertain as well. So that is a huge component that's missing. And so therefore the industry is still limping along. It's good that we are having those patrons in, especially in the suburban restaurants and downtown, but there's so many layers that are still missing as we're looking at what made us such a strong hospitality destination.
So just coming back to you, you recently referenced, and I agree, the moment Capitol Hill opts to have meetings in person, basically the fundamentals of business meetings will change. Obviously, things remain fluid, but have you heard anything about when Capitol Hill might resume in-person meetings?
Thomas, that's that question, as well as whether they will reinstall the fencing around the Capitol, are the emails that I receive mostly from locals, and I don't have an answer. I think there was a plan in place before the new variants became more of an issue. And right now, we don't know when that will happen. But we do know, as the data tells us, that when, the concern is, well, we've been doing Zooms for so long, people will want to continue to do this. There's so many reasons why that's inaccurate. The number of conventions that are industry specific that I've attended in the last 8 months, plus the fact that Pepsi is not going to allow Coke to meet on Capitol Hill and they do a Zoom meeting. That's not the way it's done. People want to get back out face to face, person to person interactivity is extremely important as it pertains to our being able to do business and build relationships. So once the opportunity is in earnest and safe, we anticipate that it will rebound rather quickly.
Yeah. So Greg, I read in the Business Journal that you're cautiously optimistic about the return of convention business, despite a few cancellations. I think we all are embarking on our 2022 budgets. And so if you could share some of the optimism with all of us.
Happy to do that. And yes, I think I, like Christopher, am an optimist at heart. So, I think the good news is, and thanks to our partnership with Elliot and his team, that these conventions get booked pretty far in advance, as you know, Thomas. And so typically 3 to 5 years in advance are some of our larger conventions. And so these conventions have been on the books. And fortunately, it's been whether they are canceling or not, as we've seen the ebb and flow of the impact of the COVID virus. So we had 18 citywide conventions at the convention center planned for our FY22. We have 15 that have remained on the books, only 3 cancellations. And so we are cautiously optimistic about that. What we will see is obviously some reduction in the attendance, particularly the international travel we know just simply will not be able to come this year. But I think that hopefully gives everyone some optimism that we are going to have events on the books. And we've already seen, we had 2 major conventions this summer that came here, Otakon and AwesomeCon, where we had 20,000, 25,000 people for the first and 15,000 for the second. And so it can be done instead of, all of us, sitting back and throwing our hands up. I think everyone's been proactive about how we're going to service the customer's needs and how we're going to do it in a safe way. And so, we're excited that there's going to be event activity. It's on the books. We've practically talk to our customers every day. And so we are all working, hand in hand to figure out what's the best approach, make sure people are safe. And as you know, Thomas, and for everyone on this call, like many of our customers, the meetings are their main source of revenue. So we are all aligned to make sure we have these meetings, particularly for the association business, because it's a core part of their business and their financials. And so we're happy to help them get back to business and serve, their members as well. And so that is why, and I would say it also extends to the sporting events. As we talked prior to this call, you mentioned, we had the AUDL championships at Audi Field. We're going to have some other sporting events. Obviously, all of our major professional teams are having their events and their games be played again, which we're seeing great attendance. And so all that, I think, adds to that equation of bringing back to people to our city. And then it's all of us, it's incumbent of all of us to do our part, even with our own organizations. Anecdotally, we need people to be coming back to Washington, D.C. to come back to their office, right? So I think I will say from my perspective, not just because we're in the event business, but our people are more productive when we're interacting and working with each other. And I think we all need to do our part to drive people back to our city to actually support our local businesses. So I think that's going to be as important as any event that we have coming to our city.
No doubt. And we're all looking forward to the Howard Hampton game this weekend.
Absolutely.
Go Howard. We got a few minutes left, and this is something that Elliot touched on earlier that I really want to take a few minutes to cover. We've all recognized the need for more diversity within our industry. There's a glaring difference between the demographics of those in the boardroom versus the dish room. Our nation witnessed and internalized the public assassination of George Floyd while quarantined at home. This obviously sent shockwaves all over the world. In addition to calls for justice, there have been calls for equity and inclusion unlike anything I've experienced in my lifetime. There have been consequential investments made to historically Black colleges and universities, new equity-centered organizations, establish an overall openness and desire to talk about race in a different way. Elliot, congratulations on receiving the Destination Organization Leadership Award. You've been one of the leading voices within the DMO community and tourism overall. And so obviously we're proud to see you get that award. If you can just take a few seconds and share with us your thoughts on George Floyd and the deliberate steps you've taken since it happened.
Absolutely. Thanks, Thomas. And it's, I think that for me professionally, I've had two wake-up calls. I referenced 9/11, whereas I looked at my career and said, I need to make some changes, and I did. And then I think about, the summer or 2020, and I looked at my career and the things in which I should have been focusing on or should be focusing on. And that's exactly what I've been doing. I think that we all have to recognize that what happened to George Floyd is not a one-time thing in terms of America's past and history. And, I'm looking at it through the lens of the industry. I took responsibility within the U.S. Travel Association and said, we will make this a topic of conversation, especially when I walked into that organization as a board member 10 years ago, and there were just two Black people in that room. So the fact that I was their first Black board chair is something that they saw in a positive way, and I saw it through a different lens. Why is it that it takes so long to recognize how important diversity is? So the death of George Floyd, as well as others, gave me an opportunity to say, I need to be more purposeful in being a leader in this conversation, talking about my experiences, talking to my friends that look like me, that don't look like me, in terms of what that meant. And then equally as much, making sure that our industry took responsibility for the lack of diversity as you look at the pyramid of a corporation or organization. So I now chair an organization called Tourism Diversity Matters. I encourage everybody to look into it, because we want actions in place. And to your point, Thomas, now more than ever, we need to be more responsible in getting folks to understand why this is important, why Black Lives Matter is different than tourism or diversity within the workplace, and why this should take place not only within your staff and team, but also your board, your marketing, and everything in which you do on a regular basis, and really identifying all areas of diversity, from the Black community to the Asian community, those with disabilities, LGBTQ, and the list goes on. So that is, in a nutshell, where we are in terms of not only talking about it, but putting things in play to make sure that we do better collectively as an industry.
Again, we commend you for your leadership on it. And just transitioning to Greg, Events DC employs a sizable number of district residents and represents a diverse workforce. In addition to your own personal thoughts on this, what impact do you see this having on the global convention center industry?
Yeah, I think, and this is a topic that is, permeates everything. Like every organization that I'm a member of, this is a discussion. But what I think is interesting is that we've raised awareness, but it's not just about awareness. Like there has to be an understanding of as an example, what racism is. It's institutional. A lot of people don't even understand it. And so there's first an education that has to happen. And then there's, then has to be a discussion about how it impacts your organization, your community, and then society at large. And I think for us, it has to be that process, because you're going to lose a lot of people who are just reacting to people's emotions. And so I think when you strip away those emotions and then people start to have a deeper understanding, you can make a connection and then start to change your organizations. And frankly, this is a tipping point for all of us to take advantage of this awareness. And if we lose this opportunity, we'll be no better than we were 20, 50 years ago. And so that's, I think, what's been the hard part, is that you have to go through this understanding and have these difficult conversations. And so then you can start to make changes, but you can't just react and want to put certain policies in place without people truly understanding, the problem. So that's what I found the most challenging in every organization that I've been associated with. So I think there's some hope, as Elliot made reference to some of the things he's doing that's happening in kind of different, kind of places in and around the industry. But you have to start within your own organization to do that. And it's not easy. And frankly, a lot of people don't know how. So you actually also have to find the resources and the people to help you do that. And that I think is the biggest opportunity for all of us. And at the end of the day, it's about access and opportunity, right? So I think that's what it needs to be explained in that context, because you'll get more people to relate to that and actually want to be part of the solution.
Absolutely. And then Christopher, a large percentage of Americans at one time or another have worked in the restaurant industry. Restaurants tend to be overwhelmingly diverse, especially in this city. what actions do you see underway within the restaurant community to diversify the ownership and executive ranks of the business?
I'm glad you asked that. I mean, I think George Floyd and Black Lives Matter has brought this to the attention of everybody, including my own small company. And when we are hiring, I mean, our staff is very diverse as it is, but in our office and that environment, that's been a focus of ours. But I am happy to say that many of our restaurant clients and hotels, restaurant groups, their HR people are telling me that, when they hire people, they are particularly interested in diversity candidates across the board. And of course, people need to be qualified and willing to work hard and passionate and all those things. But it's definitely, I see it being an emphasis for many groups now. And I'm happy to see that they're looking inward and saying, hey, we need to hire, diverse people into some of these jobs, whether it be, African-American, Asian, or Latino. And it is happening. So, I think that's a great thing for the industry.
And someone asked about the organization Elliot referenced. It's Tourism Diversity Matters. Elliot, you want to give the web address?
Yeah, it's if you Google Tourism Diversity Matters, the web address will come up, or TDM. And it is, to everyone's point, this does focus. Thank you so much for putting it in the chat. We focus on apprenticeships. We focus on what you should be focusing on as an organization in terms of having a true diverse work environment. And one of the things that I've done, as I've been a huge voice, to your point, is I had to unlearn the fact that being silent or waiting my turn is not the right thing to do. I need to be more purposeful, more and challenge people in a way, whereas it's not confrontational. It's not always comfortable, but I mean, it has to be done. I mean, I think it's a very sad testament that there are 700 destination management organizations in the U.S. and only 9 are run by Black people, and then that number is even smaller for women and Latinos, and the list goes on and on. And we have to take responsibility. So Tourism Diversity Matters is starting at the top with those CEOs that run companies and saying, here are the things in which you need to be focusing on if you really want, as Christopher said, people are expecting it. They won't do business with an organization that does not really represent a true diverse culture. And we applaud that, and we're encouraging that.
So just, there was a question that came in, and obviously you guys have been supportive of hotels and restaurants, kind of pursuit of relief to help get to the other side of the pandemic. We appreciate the support that you all have lent thus far. We're still in the middle of it, and obviously would ask for your continued support until we make it to the other side. And so that is just to cover the question that came in. And then just in closing, I too am an eternal optimist. Although the recovery is not moving as fast as I would hope, I'm encouraged that many of the nation and world's challenges, be it the global pandemic, Afghanistan, world peace, or issues of race, can only be solved in Washington, D.C. It is for this reason I'm bullish on the future of hospitality in D.C., much because of the leadership and commitment on this panel. I just want to thank you all again for your participation. And at this time, I would turn it over to Angela to close us out.
Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you so much. What a great conversation. And, in the terms of diversity and inclusion, is really a conversation that we all need to have. Like Elliot, you were saying, like speaking up and really being that leader and representing with pride and being part of is very important for all of us. I really want to thank you. What a great conversation. If there's still some more time for questions, if anybody has additional questions, I want to share with everybody that we have the State of the District coming up. It's October 2nd. Lais, if you can share the link with everybody. Some of you will be participating there, so thank you in advance for that. And also we are going to go in person with the gala. That is November 19th, Friday. So hopefully COVID will work with us, the pandemic will work with us so that we can make it happen safely. So I want to share a couple of comments that were on the chat. The first one is, it says, good morning to all. I hope all is well in Wessel Wednesday. I actually have 2 products that I would like to get in the restaurants. It's actually my grandmother's recipe. I actually catering for 2 years and had the opportunity to have 8 contracts, but it takes a lot of hard work. But other business starting flourishing as my catering was too, but I had to make a choice because I didn't have the team. My name is Latrell Duncan Fitchett. I would love to connect. So we love entrepreneurs. I don't know, Christopher, if you want to make a comment to that comment, since you're in that business as well.
I'm sorry, I was trying to read the question. What, can you just repeat it
It
quickly?
was more of a question. It's a comment. It's somebody that is starting a new business. So he says he had a catering business and now he is, let's see. Oh, he has a couple of products that he's trying to get into restaurants, and before he has a catering company. Any recommendations you may give him?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're looking to start out in the restaurant industry, right now, I think there are going to be opportunities for startups because there are going to be turnkey operations of restaurants that are closed that you can get, for a bargain. And I know it's sort of, it's a sad commentary, but it's true. There are a lot of empty retail spaces right now. If you have a restaurant that already has the infrastructure built out, it's a lot cheaper to open than an empty shell. So there are opportunities out there, and I think landlords are probably going to be more accommodating in the near future for those people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Angela,
Yeah.
if I would just say one thing about businesses like restaurants, and Christopher can probably attest to this, an amazing chef does not make a great restaurant manager. So if you are good at one level of running a restaurant and you think you can manage all the other operations, you are in for a rude awakening. So I don't know who the person is or what their level is, but make sure you have someone that has that business background and discipline that could really help you navigate through starting a small business.
That's an excellent point, Elliot. I think people think that, cook good food and be nice to people, provide good hospitality, and you're done. But, it's much more complicated than that. There's so many factors that go into your success. You can be a great cook or a great chef, but like you say, if you don't understand business, you need to find those partners or support that's going to help you in that area, because it's a team effort, and you can't do it by yourself.
Angela, it appears that she is trying to get her product into the restaurant industry. And so maybe if you could be so kind as to maybe share her contact information with us, we can reach out to her. Obviously in hotels, we have restaurants, but clearly I think there is an opportunity for us to collaborate a bit more. And so, be happy to follow up with her offline.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great example, because really I think that that's a critical role that the chamber plays, like really working to connect our small business community, and that's something that we're very, very committed to do. So Latrell, if you want to reach out to the chamber, send me an email with your contact information, or Lais, can you write down her contact information? That would be great, and we'll get in touch with you. So I want to share some of the comments from the audience. It's always good to receive that great feedback from everybody. Good morning, all. Great dialogue and great information. It's wonderful to hear from our DC experts who are the professionals in the hospitality industry. Thank you so much, Jan, for that comment. Well, Larry's here. Good morning, great to be here. Excellent, great presentation. Thank you. Thank you all for the convening. This panel discussion is necessary and helpful to keep the conversation going during these difficult times. So thank you all. I want to take one more minute to thank our sponsors again. Southwest Airlines, Events DC, and the DC Office of Economic Development. And to all of you, thank you so much for your participation. These conversations are very important, and we are, as the DC Chamber, we are committed to bring as much information as we can to our small business community in the District of Columbia. Have a wonderful day, and unless you have any closing remarks, Thomas, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to close once again.
The only thing I would say is that the one thing that the pandemic has done is it's caused for us to recognize how much we need each other. And so we will truly come through this pandemic stronger with a greater sense of collaboration. I'm encouraged that we'll get to the other side together. So again, thank you, panel. Again, thank you, obviously, for your leadership, Angela, at the Chamber. We're fortunate to have a strong chamber in the city to help advocate for business, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.